China has gone too far. They are involved in an ethnic and cultural cleansing of the Uighur Muslim community. As a secular humanist, I feel that we need to condemn this strongly and bring awareness to this issue. This is your friendly neighborhood ex-Muslim. If we want to live in a better world, we have to start by acknowledging the wrongs done to others. Being against Islam does not mean we are against all Muslims. Their right to practice their religion should be protected under secularism. We do not support any government that does such things like China is doing. And of course, the leaders of Muslim countries stand silently while worshipping the real God, money. Before I get into what China is doing, let's look at what Muslim countries are doing. Given the atrocities that China is committing, one would expect outrage from the international community at large, but particularly from Muslim majority countries. But this has not been the case. Rather, a large number of Muslim majority countries have either defended China as a human rights defender and praised China on its handling of terror and separatist threats, while others have decided to stay completely silent. Here's a map that shows countries that are supporting China's handling of the humanitarian crisis in Xinjiang and those that oppose it. In a letter to the UNHRC, a bloc of countries, including many Muslim ones, defended the Chinese government instead of shining the spotlight on the gross human rights violations that China is perpetrating. Matt Schiavenza, the senior content manager at Asia Society, noted that the silence from many Muslim majority countries may be explained by a couple of factors: the need for Chinese investment and funding, not meddling with the country's internal affairs because most of these countries also have serious human rights violations in their own backyards, and the ever-increasing influence of China on the global world. When Imran Khan, the Prime Minister of Pakistan, was asked why his country supported China, even though they are oppressing Muslims, he decided to play dumb and act like he was not aware of the situation or the scale of the problem. After insistent questioning by reporters at Davos, he later admitted and said, "China has helped us." He added, "They came to us when we were at rock bottom, and so we are really grateful to the Chinese government." Khan later claimed that Pakistan will engage with China privately, although there are no indications of such engagements yet. The Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia is also quoted by Al Jazeera as saying that China has the right to take anti-terrorism and de-extremism measures to safeguard national security during his visit to Beijing in February 2019. What a sellout. Although the Middle East and more countries seem to have abdicated the duty to defend the Uighurs and advocate for their freedom for the reasons mentioned above, we should raise our voices and spread awareness on this issue, as this is a stain on humanity. David Wood and the Apostate Prophet discussed it here.
Only strict dictatorship like China is a solution. I would not agree with that at all. China is committing a cultural genocide in the front of everyone's eyes in our time.
I've seen people say, that the Chinese, they got the right idea. Guys, you understand these are communists, right? And they're carrying out genocide, right? You can disagree with the ideology, but presumably most of us are disagreeing with the ideology because it's so violent and how much it produces contempt for people, and then you should also be criticizing the Chinese when they do that sort of stuff. Just because you get really angry at Islam and what a lot of Muslims have done doesn't mean you say, well, great, they're slaughtering them. And
I mean, think about it. There is a major atrocity going on in our time, and people are not reacting. Cultural genocide is going on in China. It's not only going on against the Muslim population, by the way, but also against certain other minorities in the country that are not Muslims. But just think about the Muslim population. We're talking about humans. We're not just talking about the religion or people that you are angry about because you don't like Islam or because you don't like Muslims. We're talking about humans, about human life. Think about a random child in China that is an Uighur Muslim in China, and one day your parents are suddenly taken away to a place and they don't come back. You're waiting for them and they don't come back. and you are brought into the custody of other people, of the government, or of other people who re-educate you and make you love the Chinese government, the Chinese regime. And one day you find out that your parents are apparently in some camp, in a Chinese re-education camp, which they were forced into, where they were tortured, mentally and physically tortured, because they happened to have some ideas that the Chinese regime considers dangerous and disrespectful to their own existence, which is why they torture this tiny group, this tiny ethnic group. It is sick, man. It doesn't matter who those people are, what they believe in. We're talking about human beings.
I applaud them for saying the right thing, for standing up for the rights of Muslims, even though all three of us, are fervent opponents of Islam. The Chinese Communist Party, CCP, is engaging in mass detention of minority Muslim groups, including Kazakh Muslims, the Falun Gong Muslims, as well as the Uighur Muslims throughout China. However, this oppression is more prominent in the Xinjiang province of China, where Uighur Muslims make over 50% of the population. To fully understand this problem, let us go back a bit and review the geopolitics at play here. The Xinjiang province is a territory formerly known as Turkestan. This territory makes up about a sixth of total Chinese land. In the 20th century, Xinjiang briefly declared independence from China, but in 1949, China usurped control of this territory. Ever since, there have been Uyghur separatist movements that have been trying to regain independence and to re-establish a free country for Uighur Muslims, and these efforts have always been thwarted by the central government of China. So the real problem to China here is political. They want to crush this political challenge. They care less about the religion and more about their distinct identity. The Uyghurs in Xinjiang are mostly of Turkic background and have their own distinct language, the Uighur language, and their own cultures and traditions. The government of China has always had problems getting Uyghurs to give up their culture and assimilate into the dominant Han culture. As a result, the government passed legislation and implemented policies which ensured that the central government of China gained more power and control of the Xinjiang region while eroding the religious freedoms and self-determination of the Uyghurs. In 2014, BBC reported students at Kashgar Normal University in Xinjiang being forced to eat during Ramadan. Such policies were justified as a response to sporadic Islamist attacks that were carried out by disgruntled separatists, but there cannot be justification on that basis. There is no reason to take away anyone's private religious freedoms to pray or fast. But then, what do you expect from a communist state? Communism is not a good ideology for humanity. Never has been. Although the targeting of Muslim minorities by China has been happening for decades, between 2016 and 2017 there was a significant increase in the aggressiveness of the tactics and the scale of the crackdown. This was because of the nomination of Chen Quanguo to leadership in the Xinjiang province, who is now leading the effort. Chen Quanguo is the chief architect of China's Muslim detention camps. The statistics on how many Uighurs are detained in these detention centers varies from source to source, as China is not allowing journalists or observers to visit these centers. But according to the Pentagon and the US State Department, between 1 and 3 million Uighurs have been detained, while the Council of Foreign Relations puts the total number of detainees to be in the range of 800,000 to 2 million. This is anywhere from 10 to 30% of the Uighurs in this province. The detention process targets Muslims. After the 2014 terror attacks that left about 30 people dead, Xi Jinping, the president of China, declared a people's war on religious extremism and terrorism. This was followed by an anti-extremism bill passed in 2017 in the Xinjiang province under the leadership of Quen, which prohibits keeping a beard, wearing a veil, or attending the mosque for prayers, or showing an affinity for Islam, among other things. More importantly, this bill officially recognized the detention centers and authorized their operation and expansion. The bill formed a major basis for the detention of Muslims. Chinese citizens are also detained for traveling to about 26 countries which are predominantly Muslim, the ones deemed sensitive by the CCP, for example, Syria and Pakistan, having relatives in any of these sensitive countries or studying there, texting any Islamic literature, or having 3 or more kids. Another worrying trend that can be observed from all former detainees' accounts is that there is no formal charges that are filed by the state, and the detainees are denied access to lawyers or to communicate with the relatives, unless it is a case where the detainees are being used as bait to lure back dissidents that the government is after. No due process is afforded to the detainees, and the state can detain them indefinitely. At first, the Chinese government used to deny the existence of such centers, but between late 2017 to early 2018, they began acknowledging it, but they vehemently argue that these are not detention centers, but rather rehabilitation centers. They argued that these centers were for de-radicalizing the Uyghurs and to train them on skills that will help them to assimilate into the Chinese community. The harrowing stories from former detainees and leaked government documents paint a completely different picture altogether. The New York Times quotes some of the leaked detention centers' operation manuals, encouraging no mercy towards detainees, but rather to be brutal with them. This corroborates the accounts of former detainees who claim that extreme torture, food, and sleep deprivation were rampant in the detention centers. In an interview with Business Insider, Saryagul Sautebe, an ethnic Kazakh Chinese national and former employee of the Chinese state, alleges that she witnessed forced abortion, sterilization, and administrations of IUDs being performed at a detention center where she was working as a Mandarin and Chinese propaganda teacher. In the same interview, she recounts an incident in which a young female was gagged by the male guards while everyone else was forced to watch. Saryagul goes further and alleges that the people at these detention centers were carrying out experiments on the detainees by injecting them with unidentified substances and forcing them to take pills without any further explanation. Such victims are said to be reporting impotence, cognitive decline, and other neurodegenerative conditions. This seems to be in line with many accounts given by other former detainees. Khairat Samakard echoed the same sentiments that there is torture occurring in other different detention centers. In September 2019, an NGO campaigning against forced organ harvesting called the China Tribunal accused the Chinese government of mass harvesting organs from live detainees against their will. The lead counsel for China Tribunal, Hamid Sabi, told the UNHRC that forced organ harvesting in Chinese detention centers has been happening in China for a long time, and that according to the group's investigation, this practice has severely affected Muslims, particularly the Falun Gong Muslims. Most of these organs are allegedly sold to Muslim countries, including the Emirates, as so-called halal organs. As part of the process of de-radicalization of the Uyghurs at the detention centers, the Uyghurs are taught Mandarin and are forbidden to speak in their native language. The process can best be described as deculturalization and is intended to strip the Uyghurs of their cultural heritage and force them to adapt to the Chinese culture. The detainees are forced to pledge allegiance to China, the CCP, and Xi Jinping himself, and renounce Islam. They are forced to sing propaganda songs praising China. Here we see state workers monitoring the use of Mandarin Chinese in an Uyghur children's classroom. In a children's classroom? We need to all stop right now and be grateful that we don't live in a country like this where the government comes into your children's classroom. Canada recently apologized for residential schools for taking Aboriginal children and forcing them to speak French and English and not allowing them to speak their own language. Seems that we humans just keep making the same mistake. The Chinese government also engages in intrusive and extensive surveillance of the Uyghurs. The Council on Foreign Relations and many other reputable news organizations report that the Chinese government uses CCTV cameras that are equipped with facial recognition software, such that if any person behaves strangely in any manner, they are identified and reprimanded. These cameras make up a vast surveillance network and are found everywhere, including on the streets, in mosques, and in shops.
In this little shop, dozens of locals come every day to buy samsa, a baked pastry filled with mince. Here too, and in nearly every shop, cameras are watching. The cameras and checkpoints suck up oceans of information about people. But who is viewing all these images?
There's also a heavy police presence in the province. When Chen Quango came into the administration of Xinjiang, he introduced a grid system in which each grid is about 500 people being served by a large police camp. The number of police checkpoints has increased and the police force itself has been more than doubled in most towns in Xinjiang province. The police began patrolling near the mosques to serve as a reminder that the state is always present and watching and listening.
The intimidation works. We visited one of the few mosques in the city that remain open, the famed Idka Mosque. Only a few dozen men came for the main prayers on a Friday, the main Islamic day of worship. A few years ago, thousands of worshippers gathered.
Here we see security personnel patrol near the Id Ka Mosque in Kashgar, a city in the northwestern Xinjiang province. While the family members are in detention centers, the government sends Han's workers were imposed on the Uighur families as relatives. These relatives are to make sure that the family members of the detainee are also indoctrinated and monitored closely. Part of each of the relatives' job is to teach the detainees family, Mandarin, CCP, and Chinese propaganda while monitoring for any deviations from the government's teaching. A state worker reads Xi Jinping's report for the 19th National Congress of the CCP to an Uighur relative. Imagine the government sending someone into your house to watch everything you say and do. Pretty scary, right? This completes the loop of indoctrination where the detainee is being closely monitored and indoctrinated by the detention center guards while his or her relatives at home are also being indoctrinated by these relatives. If we want to live in a better world, we have to start by acknowledging the wrongs done to others. Being against Islam doesn't mean we are against all Muslims. Their right to practice the religion should be protected by secularism. We do not support any government that does such things. And of course, the leaders of Muslim countries stand silently while their Muslim brothers and sisters are thrown into detention camps. What a pity. Let's raise awareness on this issue and fight it however you can. Please share this video and do tell others about what China is doing to the Uighur people. If you know someone who is a Chinese Uighur Muslim and would like to be interviewed on my channel, please let them know to contact me and I would love to talk to them about what China is doing. Of course, for their own safety, we can do this anonymously as well. This is your friendly neighborhood ex-Muslim signing out.